All right, we're here in Miami for a massive episode of The Deal.
Josh Harris, I mean, when you think about team owners, he is the guy. He has a playbook for having multiple teams in multiple cities. Think about the Commanders, the Sixers. I'm gonna be taking a lot of notes.
What a time to be talking to him. He is just past announcing a huge deal for a new stadium in Washington, D.C.
$3.8 billion. I cannot wait to get into the details.
Tons to talk about. Let's get after it. This is an interview we have had circled for a long time. Josh Harris, I could spend the entirety of the episode talking about all the different things that you do. Welcome to The Deal.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, so sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart. We're talking to you days removed from really one of the biggest deals that's happened in sports in a long time, the announcement of a new stadium in Washington, D.C. We've got a lot to talk about, but let's start there. What do you make of it? Like, how substantial, how seismic is this in your sports life?
Well, it's seismic, I think, for the city, for the DMV, for DC. DC is obviously an incredibly important city. And, you know, I grew up there. I grew up in Chevy Chase, Maryland. And to be able to bring football back to RFK Stadium, the spiritual home of Washington football, of the Commanders, and you know, build a next generation world-class venue. I mean, obviously venues are advancing, the technology is advancing, the fan experience is advancing, and then, you know, it's not just a football venue. We're gonna put a dome on it. We're gonna make it about football, but we still put a dome on it. It's very important to the city that they be able to host massive events like the Super Bowl. Maybe we're now going to push Roger on that, but you know, whatever, Beyonce, you know, pick an event, and DC obviously is a gateway city for the United States, so it'll make DC great and proud. And then not only that, it's it's a $2.7 billion stadium, but it's a $3.8 billion, including all the stuff that's going to happen with the infrastructure and everything. And then there's the stadium itself is about 15% of the overall ground. I don't know if you've ever been down there, but
of course.
You got the Capitol and the monument. You can see it. You got the Anacostia River, and then it's a 15-minute bike ride to Nationals Park, the Navy Yard. So you're going to redevelop a lot of neighborhoods with DC, affordable housing. You have a whole bunch of parks. And then, you know, retail, mixed use. And so you're going to really change those areas in a really positive way. And DC has had an amazing, they've done this in the past. So, you know, it's incredible, actually, and really exciting to be able to engage with the city and help a city.
It is a massive deal. It's on a scale that, you know, we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, take us inside if you can, and sort of getting it done. Like, what were the key issues that you had to overcome? I mean, you were looking at multiple sites. DC emerges, you know, as the winner ultimately. There's a lot going on, as you said, in Washington. What was the key decision point for you in really getting this done?
Okay, so we play in Maryland today. The team has played in Maryland since the 90s, like the late 90s, and you know, obviously the DMV is DC, Maryland, Virginia. DC's in the middle, right? So RFK is in the middle. So Maryland, right, for Virginia fans, a little further, but we play in Maryland. And so the first thing we had to do is assure all through the process Governor Moore, who really cares about Landover.
The governor of Maryland.
The governor of Maryland. You know, he wanted to make sure that, you know, we said to him, look, we have to consider DC because it's the spiritual home of the Commanders. And he said, look, I'm willing to let you consider that and be generous about allowing you to have some options, but you need to convince me that you're gonna, you know, build something in Maryland if you decide to leave. And so we concluded a deal with the governor, and that allowed for the project the land to be transferred to DC. So I don't know if you remember, but as the last Congress was sunsetting, we got a 100-0 vote in the Senate,
yes,
which moved the land to DC. So until the land was under federal control, until the land was under DC control, and then it wasn't possible to build a stadium. From there, you know, we went into we had negotiations going with a lot of different parties, and we're blessed that everyone wants the Commanders, and ultimately concluded a deal with the mayor that would be highly beneficial for DC, and at $2.7 billion, which is what we're putting up. It's the largest investment in DC ever. So it's the largest investment in DC's history. And so once the mayor decided that it was okay, we signed a term sheet with the mayor, and now we're working with the DC City Council, who, the project has incredible ROI for DC, literally billions of tax revenues, thousands of homes, and thousands of jobs, right? And so,
And affordable homes.
and of that, 30% are by agreement going to be, at least that will be affordable homes. And so it's going to raise the standard. And then you get an amazing entertainment district. And who's not going to play in a new stadium with the backdrop being literally the Capitol, right? And then you get the redevelopment on the Anacostia River. So this is going to change DC. And so I'm hopeful that the council's doing its work. A number of them are already supporting that, but we have some work to do. So now the next step for us is to obviously get the council's vote. You've got to tell the citizens and the politicians, why this is good for the city, why they should invest their money in this. And the reality is DC is going through a harder time right now, and we were very sensitive to that and made sure that this deal was very good for DC. But I'm also focused on making it a place where our opponents fear to come, which is how I grew up, and where our fans love to come.
Yeah.
And, our RFK, right, was it was an incredible arena. The stands would shake, and it was a smaller arena, but it was loud, and, people showed up.
Yeah. And so I want to talk even more broadly about, you've got multiple arena projects going on literally around the world. But before we get there, and maybe to lead into that, how do you balance the sort of private and public funds of it all? This has been like one of the substantial questions around developing stadiums. How did you come to sort of the calculus there?
Yeah, so if you look at the calculus, we had to make sure that it was very favorable to DC. And so, because that's definitely something that people consider. Sometimes there's the ROI of a stadium, but they also want to know, okay, how much is the city contributing? And the RFK site has been sitting there since they closed RFK.
Right.
And it's like crumbling concrete. It's not great, right? There's nothing there. Nothing's been done with it.
And generating
generating zero, and actually costing money to make sure it's safe, because it's just an open air thing, and there are pests and everything else. So whatever they do, whatever DC decides to do, they're going to have to put a bunch of money into that site, just creating sewage and infrastructure and other things, and then we paid for everything else.
Okay.
And when you benchmark it, there's actually articles that say, wow, did the Commanders get a good enough deal? And, we're getting criticized, which I guess if that's the criticism, people are leveling at me.
The criticism is that you didn't get enough
criticism
money
in certain NFL sports.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
So I'll take that criticism, because on the other side of that, we have to convince DC and the public that it's fair. And we have to convince the council that it's fair, and the mayor has to sell it, and the public is overwhelmingly supportive, which I think should help us. I think that usually these things are more controversial, but everyone who grew up in DC or in the DMV knows that they remember what a great place RFK was and how unifying it was. And what it was like when Washington football was dominant in the NFL, and I think we can bring it there again.
So you've been a deal maker for a long time. A lot of the deals you seem to be doing right now are for stadiums and arenas. You have a deal that we'd love to talk about to build a new arena in South Philly. Then you've got a big project in South London with Crystal Palace, the football club that you're an owner of as well. What's the common thread there?
Yeah, so the common thread is building amazing fan experience, player experience, and something that helps the cities, right? So you're ultimately in finance, you're a steward of people's capital. In sports, you're a steward of people's memories and how they feel. So how the Commanders do, how the teams play, makes the city happy or the area happy, and then you have to treat everyone incredibly well. And so if you start with that as a premise, and you say, I'm going to be guided, my North Star is going to be, how do we create amazing memories? I had amazing memories at RFK. I remember some of my earliest memories. I remember being 4 years old. Literally 4 years old, and walking in there with my dad, and just hearing it all. And I don't remember a lot about it, but then I remember being 8 and Washington football losing to the Dolphins 14-7 in the Super Bowl. And Garo Upremian block kick was the one touchdown. Washington ran all the way back, and we lost 14-7. Dolphins were 17-0, Don Choi and Greasy.
Yeah.
On Sundays, D.C. would shut down, and D.C. is obviously, if not the most important, amongst the most important cities in the world. And everyone would be glued to their TVs or at the stadium. I remember riding my bike to the store once, and no one's out. They're all watching football. So I think that I want to bring those days back, and I want to make DC proud. And it's the same would go for Philly and London. Whatever you do, it has to be about the fans and about the experience and about the players and enhancing their experience and their ability to win, because winning really matters.
Yeah. And so let's talk about Philly for a second, because that arena is a really interesting case study. Some twists and turns there.
Twists and turns.
to say the least. Looked for a while like you were going to go into a different site. You ultimately come together with an announcement with your friends at Comcast to, redevelop, very close to where you currently play there in South Philly. What were the key moments there at the end that got you to where you needed to be? So
the key moments were that, we wanted to build a city arena. Comcast wanted to build an arena out by them and do it a little bit later than we did. And when we came together, we said, again, with the North Star being, what's great for Philly? What's the right thing for Philly? We decided that we would build sooner, so create the fan experience sooner, and do it in their site, and do it together, but also redevelop the site that we had created in the Fashion Mall district right downtown, and do something great there as well. And so the city would get, two for the price of one, and that allowed for the deal to move forward. And us doing it together with basketball and hockey in the same arena, and the combined, kind of Comcast and HBSC, that'll allow us to build a better arena that's even greater for the city, but also develop, downtown and help that area as well. And, one of the awkward things was, we had different perspectives, and it had caused, a lot of, I'd say, debate in Philly on both sides. And at the end, Brian and I just came together, and said, look, let's just put this behind us and create a win-win.
Brian Roberts at Comcast.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And that, like Philly had, that took a little adjusting for the city, but at the end of the day, the strength of the project garnered the support of the mayor and support of the city. And so we're moving forward really quickly in a positive way.
So going back to your kind of Harvard Business School days, then you found Apollo with 2 other partners. And then around 11, you get into the world of sports once you go public at Apollo. You took one of your old playbooks, corporate carve-out from Comcast, right? Talking about Brian Roberts. Ed Snyder was probably involved somewhere in the world there. You bought that team for $280 million or so.
Yes.
What was your vision? You've always had a tendency to look around corners. Did you ever dream that the world of sports would balloon to where it is today? And what has that experience kind of shaped? Now the Commanders, Devils at 320. How do you go from those numbers to 6 and justify it?
Yeah, so I would say that it would be hard for anyone to say that they dream that the valuations in sports would be where they are today. But I felt that, when we looked at the Sixers, it started off as an emotional thing. Apollo had gone public. I found myself, financially successful more than I had ever dreamed. And I had gone to Penn. My dad had gone to Penn. I knew a fellow, David Blitzer, from Penn. And the Sixers were part of a big entity that had the Flyers and the arena and a series of other arenas. And Ed Schneider was managing it. And his passion was the Flyers. He had started the Flyers, and the Flyers were doing great, and the Sixers were not doing as well for many, many years. And I lived through this thing, and it must have been indelibly in my memory. In 1982, the Washington football won the Super Bowl. Washington was a very divided city, both racially and socioeconomically. Everyone came out in the streets. One ticker tape parade, senior in high school. Go up to Penn as a freshman. I'm 17. I see Dr. J, Moses Malone, Maurice Cheeks, Andrew Toney win the NBA title, and they dominate the playoffs. And then Philly, which was also a very challenged city, tough economics, comes out in the streets. And for a moment in time, sports brought everyone together. And I noted that I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be an owner of both these teams. So I to have the opportunity to own both these teams, it's an amazing thing. But coming back to your question, when we bought the Sixers, they had less connection with the city, and that in teams, if you're connected with the city, if they think you're trying to win, if they think you're on their side, if you're doing things for the right reasons, generally the revenues follow, right? Mm-hmm. So at this point, the revenues were lagging. Mm-hmm. They were near the bottom in revenues. They were losing $50 million a year, and the NBA was in a lockout. And so they weren't even playing. And so we put together a group, and we sort of decided to zig when others were zagging. Mm-hmm. It was a little contrarian. And we said, look, we think that this team really matters. It's got a storied history. We think we can reconnect with Philly if we do the right things. And we, brought in a whole new we bought it at $280 million. It took 18 months. A lot of negotiations with Comcast, who were very good at their job. And it took 18 months, and I remember the Comcast team saying, like, well, we're going to schedule the arena. We do that, and you'll just get whatever. And we're like, nah, why don't we have input into that? So there are a million issues like that. Wow. Just like little nuanced issues that really matter, because the days you get really matter. And then we reconnected with the city. We started to win basketball games. We started to improve the fan experience, the food, the driveway to driveway experience. And then now you fast forward to today, we're top quartile, top 5 in every major revenue category, and teams profitable. And then along the way, more importantly, global, the evolution of sports, right? Mm-hmm. It used to be that you watch sports on cable. With cable becoming streaming, people can watch sports all over the world. More people watch the Sixers, in many cases, in China or overseas than watch them in Philly. And so the value creation that's occurring at these leagues is obviously massive uplift in revenue. And that's creating massive growth in revenue, which is creating some profitability. I mean, each league is different, and obviously certain leagues are more profitable than others. But over time, it's allowing for the teams to invest and enhance their experiences. And what's happening in sports is garnering more and more attention. Mm-hmm. And more consumer focus, like live events. Wow. And so the big 5 sports are now global media businesses. So that all that stuff has contributed, and we could talk a lot about valuation if you want.
It's so intriguing. Like, you talked about this evolution of growth in sports, mostly driven by media and other things, gaming and real estate and holding companies and all that. My question to you is, how does private equity play in this situation? Obviously, anytime you have institutional money coming into a space, yep, usually their valuations rise. What's your thought on that? And if you were on the private equity side, would you get into sports?
Yeah, so what's happened is sports values have rocketed up pretty much for the big sports. And it's all different, but certainly the NFL and the NBA leading the way, but also the NHL and certainly global soccer, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that what's happening is that the companies, the teams are getting so big that the amount of equity and the amount of leverage that the leagues allow is limited. And so, for example, I'll use the Commanders example. I'll give you round numbers. We paid obviously $6 billion for the Commanders, which at the time everyone said was the highest price of I would say my credentials as a value investor were shattered because
Josh is crazy. Josh is crazy.
paid the highest price in sports, right? And now that price looks pretty good, but I think that we put up $5 billion of equity, right?
Wow.
And I was not allowed to talk to private equity. I had to go raise $3 billion and one family at a time. So I think what the NFL, what other sports, certainly the NBA and the NHL leading the way, have done is say, okay, in some form, we're going to allow institutional capital in here, because if we don't, the valuations are going to be constrained, and we want people to still be able to build stadiums to enhance fan experience, to enhance streaming. And so allowing capital in for these now much bigger media companies to continue to improve and innovate is very important. And so that's why private equity is coming in. And obviously private equity coming in is creating demand for investment. So that's lifting the sports team values.
Well, and to that point, I mean, we can talk real numbers here. You know, you buy it for, $6 billion and change, and, within a year or so, year or two, you've got NFL teams, Dolphins and Eagles, selling stakes, valuing them at upwards of $8 billion. So where does that go? I mean, so, put on your Apollo trained hat, your Drexel trained hat, your HBS, like
26 North,
the 26 North, all of the things that you do. What does it do to valuations going forward? Like, look around the corner. As Alex said, you're very good at looking around the corner. Look around the corner on valuations for us.
So I think the way I think about it is this: there's a scarcity value that is associated with these teams, right? So, there's a small number of people in the world that can lead these deals. And there's only, 30, there's only 32. It depends on the league. And so one of the things that's happening is that people want to own the teams. They want to be involved in it. They want to be part of building, creating memories for cities and winning and competing. And so I thought when I bought the Commanders that I was going to be outbid by Jeff Bezos, just to be very direct about it. It was rumored that he was interested, and obviously he doesn't, for me to put together a $5 billion equity account is much harder than for someone of his wealth to put together. He can just stroke a check and do it, right? So I thought I would lose, but it was a labor of love. I really felt it needed to happen, and God smiled, I guess, on me. But my point being that part of the valuation uplift is just the scarcity value. But I would say the second thing is that as revenues grow, cash flow will grow, right? So I think a good analogy is, beachfront real estate, where if teams are losing money, it'll limit the number of people that are willing to lose money consistently. If teams start to make money or make increasing amounts of money, then it draws in people. And I look at it as in the case of the NFL, which is the most profitable league right now, we think that, we're buying at a real cap rate of 3 to 4 going to 5 to 6. So even though that sounds like a very high EBITDA multiple, I look at it as like cash flow yield. And the NFL and the NBA and the NHL and all these leagues are incredible businesses. They're dominant in our culture. It's live entertainment. They're growing. There's lots of innovation. So I look at it as growth equity. And then most of the cash flow is guaranteed by massive media and technology companies, so that, it's almost like you get this yield and then you participate in the growth and the scarcity value evaluation. So, and if you look at it, the only thing that's done better than private equity, honestly, if you go back, is sports valuation. So I'll just throw out the NFL numbers. The Bills, $1.3 billion, $1.4 billion. The Panthers, 2.2, 2.3. Broncos in 2022, 4.6. Us at 6. And now, so that's 4x in 10 years. And now you start to hear about some of the things, and I think there'll be trades even higher than what you're saying. I think those are coming.
Yeah.
At
10 billion? You think 10?
I don't know. I think there could be stuff in the 9 to 10 range. I mean, it's all coming together. I think eventually, for sure.
Yeah.
And so I think that, but I'm saying near term.
Yeah.
Literally. And that's only been, we bought the club coming up on 2 years ago, right? So I think that I think you're going
So maybe you are a value investor after all.
I think I'm a value investor in terms of the growth equity. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think this is growth equity. I think it's also unique, and it's backstopped by media. And as long as you think people are going to want the content, and we have long-term media deals, and also it's very resilient economically, right? So certainly, if there's harder times, not as many people will come to the games or whatever, but the media payments are locked in. That's, the majority of the revenue. And even in harder times, people want something to celebrate. So I think these are fundamentally great businesses. They're also inflation resistant, right?
Yeah.
Like if inflation goes up. So when you talk about cap rates, 3 to 6 real cap rate, that's a reasonable, that'll go up and down and be inflation resistant. So I think they're really good businesses, and I think they are actually interesting investments, and I think it will keep going up.
So Josh, we can arguably say nobody reads a P&L better than you. You're a P&L savant. My question is very specific. Do you value more EBITDA or free cash flow, and why?
It's all free cash flow. I mean, EBITDA, even in private equity, everyone talks about EBITDA. Generally, they're looking at free cash flow. It's just a proxy for free cash flow. And since many businesses have different capital spending, EBITDA is just a way of saying, hey, 6 times EBITDA. But ultimately, everyone who knows what they're doing is looking at free cash flow. In terms of the Commanders, we felt that the Commanders used to be the number one franchise in the NFL for many, many years. So everyone says Dallas is the number one franchise.
Number one in terms of revenue?
Revenue.
Is that right?
Wow.
Yeah, and for many years, and then obviously they didn't do as well. So when you looked at when we bought the Commanders, they were in the 20s out of 32, and so if we get them to league average, we'll double the EBITDA, and you're not commenting on your numbers, right. And then if we with the new media deal, we'll triple it. And if we build a new stadium, we'll we have to invest, but we'll get some push up
and
there
execute.
So I think that we think we are in the process of enhancing the Commanders, but again, it's all about doing it for the city and not worrying about it. But when you do that, and a lot of it is just driven by the media uplift, right? That just comes from the upward trend in media. Certainly the NBA deal, which was 2.7x over 11 years, it makes it look like NFL content is severely undervalued, and there's uplift there, right? So you can now, without even factoring that in, we feel like we're going to get increased cash flow many multiples.
And you guys have an opt-out, which is going to be good time.
Yeah.
Good time.
I'll leave that one to the league, but
Yeah.
No, and then you have to make your case. Like, you're making your case. If you think about the Commanders ownership group, Mitch Rales, who built arguably one of the best companies in America, Danaher, obviously Magic Johnson, and then a whole bunch of other people that are very shrewd investors, including some people on Wall Street. They want to be part of it, right? But at the same time, they want to understand, okay, what's the return here? Why should I, write a check? And again, the obviously, as being part of an NFL franchise, there's a limit to how many people you can accept, and so we had to ask people for really significant investments. So they certainly wanted to know how it was going to work, right? And we were able to say, we're going to win for the city, we're going to spend, we're going to invest, but here's why we think that the value of the equity will go up. And a lot of it has to do with all the things we've talked about here, the upward trend in sports values, the scarcity value, but also our ability to move the Commanders back to being relevant for the DMV again, and therefore fill up the stadium, which was empty, get sponsors back, and feel great about being part of the Commanders again.
Yeah, so I'm glad you went there, because I wanted to talk about some of the ways you've changed running the actual business. So this report card, everybody looks at the report card now from the NFL Players Association.
Yes, they do.
And you know that all too well. This franchise was dead last, and you've now moved up to 11th. That's a huge move, and that, just for people out there, this is based on player feedback. This is what the players say about their teams. Were there one or two things that you set out to do, or that you, looking back, did that made that number jump and that rank jump as much as it did?
So first of all, when you run a sports team and you're an owner, your three most important jobs: hiring a GM, hiring a coach, hiring a president to run the business operations, and making them incredibly talented and like-minded in terms of values.
By the way, this owner is nodding right about this.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to be, I mean, ultimately, right, there's just 1,000 decisions that are made, and you should not want, I do not have the inclination, I don't want to be involved in all 1,000. I want to be involved in the most important decisions, and then I want people who have the same vision that I do, which is it's really a servant leader mindset, like do this on behalf of the city or on behalf of the players. So, Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, obviously Mark Klaus from Campbell's is an amazing get for us. But then as far as specifically answering your question, the facilities that the players were showering in, playing in, weight training in. When we showed up, there wasn't even a game clock. Our bubble was deflating. And so we just literally said that, what you want to do is become a destination for players. Look, there's a relatively small amount of people who can play or coach or be in the front office of major sports. And so your job is to become a destination where they feel like they matter, you care about them, and the way that you articulate that is to create amazing facilities to make their lives easier. And so we've rebuilt everything from showers to locker rooms to weight facilities to food. And we really showed them that we cared about them, to how they travel. I mean, think about it. If you have to travel all over the place and you're, and you're not staying in a nice hotel, or you're not traveling on a great plane, that's going to make a huge difference in your life. And so people think that the players, I mean, Alex, you were a player.
No, everything you're saying is spot on. I mean, these are the things that really matter to us.
Right. Think about it. There were probably some owners where, you felt like, hey, my life is harder. And some owners where you felt like, hey, this guy really, or this person really cares about me. In addition to, I mean, obviously, each player wants to get compensated fairly, and that's all part of it. But a lot of great players today can play wherever they want, right? Mm-hmm. So your job is to attract them and make them feel welcome, and that starts with with the front office and the coaching staff, but it also goes to their facilities. And so, we've spent $125 million across the stadium and the player facilities. And again, I think that you win in sports by invest. I don't think this is like it's a growth. As I said, I analogize it to growth equity. Cutting back stuff, skimping. I don't think that's right in sports. You're entertaining and you're attracting talent. So you've got to be like first class every step of the way. And that's why it improved. I think that the players, I engage enough with the players and the coaches that they know that I'm there for them. And when they notice, hey, the food's not great, or something else, if you saw, like, for example, there's only like one cold plunge, right? So it's like,
oh my
are you
gosh.
kidding me?
Right.
It turns out, by the way, that because I cold plunge, the normal cold plunge costs about $6,000. You have to get a special cold plunge because everyone's so big.
Yeah.
So
right.
so it's more expensive. But I said, go get it. Like,
Right.
Are you kidding me?
I love the cold plunge. I did it every day.
I did it
it's
before
so
I came
good.
here. I like
Did
it
you
too.
really? You're a cold plunge guy. Okay.
So, Josh, you said you don't want to make a million decisions. That obviously makes all the sense in the world. You're hiring the best people. You're paying them well. They're aligned with your vision. How often do you kind of sit down on a Zoom? Is it once a week, twice a week to get a report on what's going on with the numbers, X, Y, Z?
Yeah, so it's as needed. And then, the great thing about sports is that you do a lot of games. You go to a lot of games. So I'm there a lot. And, obviously when you're building a stadium, when you're around the draft, when you're around free agency, when there's things going on, you're there a lot more. And what we do is we have a standing call. Mm-hmm. And stuff happens, right? Like there can be stuff that happens in the arena that requires immediate attention you can't ignore. And so, if stuff happens in the world, right? Mm-hmm. George Floyd, like we, immediately we're on the phone, like we need to put out a statement. This is wrong. But that requires you as an owner, right? That's the values of the org. And you have to like see what, I mean, I went on YouTube, right, and said, well, okay, what really happened here, right? If I'm going to stand, or, when October 7th happened, kind of, getting the leagues and the teams to support, and empathize with the people that were killed. So I think that all of these things happen, and you just have to be on call 24/7 and be, in essence, on call for the public and do your job. And, it's as needed. And so in the off season when nothing's going on, it is once a week. But then it's a lot more than that.
And so talk about that public facing piece, because, you're sitting across from a guy who was like, on the cover of magazines. He was in the public.
It's very public.
Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse.
Amen.
Since the age of, 15, 16, 17 years old, you were able to go through much of your career. I know who you were, but it was my job. I was at Bloomberg. So you were a star athlete in my mind in that regard. But owning a team where everybody knows your name, where you're sitting courtside or you're sitting in the box, what is that transition like? How do you cope with that? Especially, I'll say it out loud, owning a football team in Washington and a basketball team in Philadelphia. These are not cities that love each other.
I think that you have to embrace, if you want to do this as the managing owner, as the control owner, you need to embrace the fact that you're now a public figure, and that comes with all of the issues that you might think that Alex has lived with. But, people come up to you, people interrupt you and want to talk about the team, good and bad. Obviously pretty happy people in Washington, and, we less happy in other locations this particular year. And you have to be, even signing autographs. And then, there's, you all of a sudden, you in some cases need security when you go into enemy territory, maybe. And then, everything you do plays out on the front page, in the paper, right? So you have to be righteous in your behavior. So if you're not prepared to be righteous in your behavior and do things that the people can relate to on the front page of the paper, then you probably shouldn't do it. And there's no way around it. And I didn't really realize what I was signing up for, honestly. I'd never been through it like Alex. And, Alex certainly, could probably write 3 books on this subject.
Unfortunately.
But, and then it starts to, your family starts to get known. I mean, all that stuff. But I'd say that just comes with it, and for good or for bad. And we own clubs, own teams in really tough cities. Like Philly fans are amazing. They care, but they're, they take no prisoners, right? And they hold us accountable.
Yeah.
And certainly when the Commanders played the Eagles in the NFC Championship, I tried to explain to everyone that if you just grew up in South Philly, I understand why you're all about Philly sports, but I grew up in Washington and Philly. My mom was from Philly. My grandmother's from Philly, but I grew up in Washington, but then I went to Penn when I was 17, and I saw these two teams, and I love these two teams. And so I tried to explain myself, and I'd say 97% of the fans got it, but there's going to be some fans that just because of that, and I understand that, right? And that's just something that I have to live with. But today, like, there are a lot of people, increasingly, these are big businesses, and more you're going to see people owning, whether it's the Cronkies or Fenway Sports, or, you're going to see people owning teams in different cities, certainly the Glazers. So this isn't a unique thing, but certainly in a city like Philly, which really cares about sports, and I respect, it definitely is something I have to manage.
You weren't surprised at the vitriol?
I don't think there was. I mean, honestly, I don't believe there was that much. I think there are in any situation, there'll be a few loud voices, and then by and large, like, I think that we have, invested in the Sixers. The Sixers have won. They have not won the NBA championship, which we need to deliver for the city. We're, trying to do the right things by the city, and, the loud voices on Twitter, you just can't let them.
First of all, you can't control injuries. You won't say it, I'll say it, because I'm your partner in the NBA. I think you've done an extraordinary job with the NBA. But Josh, I want to kind of rewind a little bit back to I don't know you much like Jason knows you on the private equity world. I know you're more friendly, what you do with philanthropy as much as anybody. I'm always fascinated with how you balance your schedule, because I know what you do in the world of business, but disclaimer, our kids go to school together, and Pierce and Ella are very good friends, and they're both juniors in high school. And I see how committed you are to your family. You have 5 kids. How do you balance everything, and how important is your family to what you do in the business world?
So my family is incredibly important to me. So I have 5 priorities, and I try to cut everything else out. And so first of all, your health. So we talked about cold plunging. If you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not eating well, you're not going to be good. We all of us have to be on so much, and so you need to bring it every day. And so making sure that you're well and taking care of yourself spiritually and physically is good. Then for me, it's my family. And I try to spend as much time with my family as they'll spend with me, which is sometimes the kids they're like, Dad.
When you have teenagers, they're like, we're good. Thanks, though.
And then it's business, right? And business for me is, I look at business as how do you impact the world in a positive way. I think that business is a real force for good. I think that, in 26 North, we own a lot of companies and finance a lot of companies, and we manage money for retirees and pensioners, right? And so our job is to bring it and win and create returns for millions of beneficiaries by creating alpha, right? That's how I look at it, and I sell it to our team as bigger than ourselves. But then also sports, and in sports, look, I own sports teams. I manage 26 North. I grew up in the finance business. Just because you're good at private equity, and I think some people get confused, doesn't mean you should be picking the starting lineup for the Washington Commanders or the Philadelphia 76ers. But so I spend, more of my time where I'm the CEO of 26 North, but I spend a lot of time on sports. So and I work all the time. So I'm probably, 20 hours on sports, 60 hours on business, right? Now I need to get that down.
And people don't understand how difficult and grueling business is. Even through my 25-year career, sometimes it's more exhausting to do the business and to travel and to keep up with hundreds of people that work for you. It's just a lot.
It's a lot. And at this point, I want people on my teams that are aligned with me culturally, where they want to bring it, right? In everything that I do, it's about creating this culture of we're in this to win for the city, the pensioners, and we're up against, in the case of alternatives, it could be, any of the big firms, or in the case of sports, it could be the Celtics or the Eagles or whoever it is. And so you got to bring it. You got to take care of yourself, but if you need to be on that 10 o'clock conference call, unless you want to do that, we're probably not going to be aligned. And then you have to be really good at your job. And so these cultures actually can be quite similar. And then our last thing is, for all these, I find now later in life that people that are nice, we have codes of conduct and morality and all that, but people that are genuinely good people that care about other people, are much better to have around the ecosystem. So you can be really good at your job, but you may not be the nicest person, right? So as much as you can, getting people that are about other people, that's a big part of it as well. And so more of my time on 26 North, but as needed on sports, and I'll be there when I'm needed.
But one of the interesting things as you think about this expanding sports portfolio that sort of come to the fore in Philly specifically is an area that you haven't been in as much, and I think you want to be in, which is women's sports. The WNBA expansion team, I believe, is sort of part of the business case for the new arena. Talk to us about, as a growth investor, what's the case there?
So I think we're at an existential moment in women's sports. I think that women are half the people on the planet. And sports is really important to me personally. And there's no reason why women shouldn't be doing that as much as men. And now you've seen a breakout in the NWSL. You've seen a breakout in global soccer. Palace, we have a Palace women's team at the highest level. And, obviously the NBA, the WNBA is breaking out. And I don't believe it's just I mean, the NBA broke out obviously around, Will Chamberlain or Michael Jordan. But it was a tailwind, right? It wasn't just that; it just stair-stepped it, and I think that's where we are in women's sports. And I think if you're going to be in a major sport that really matters to a city, you should have an adjunct women's team in some of these sports. And so we're engaged with the NBA. We hope that they will allow Philly to be, in the WNBA and having very productive dialogues. And I think that we also are seeing it. We have a platform called Unrivaled, which is something that I started with David Blitzer that Andy Campion now runs. And Unrivaled is a youth sports. We run camps and leagues and clinics. And we're seeing a lot across baseball, football, action sports. And we're seeing a lot of girls wanting to play flag football. And so I see that as another big lift in women's sports. And I think this is going to be around for a long time, and more it's going to grow.
All right. Now it's time for rapid fire. We're going to do 10 questions.
These are the tough questions, Josh.
These are the tough
Be
ones.
Careful.
All right. What's one word to describe your deal-making style?
Flexible.
What's more important to you in a deal, your gut or data?
Data.
Who's your dream deal-making partner?
David Blitzer.
What's the best piece of advice you've received on deal making or business?
You can't do a good deal with a bad person.
What's the worst advice you've been given?
If you pay a low enough price, you can make it work.
What's Josh Harris's hype song before you go into a big meeting or negotiation?
Ooh, Coldplay.
Ooh, I like that.
Good. What's one word to describe this past season for the Commanders?
Joyous.
This is a tough one, Josh. If you can only watch one sport for the rest of your life, which one is it?
I can't pick one kid. I can't pick one sport.
All right. We'll give you a pass on that one because you're involved in way too many sports.
Too many kids.
Tricky.
All right. Well, this one is going to be similarly tough. I feel another pass coming on. What team do you want to see win a championship more than any?
I like all of our teams to win championships. I mean, honestly, that's what we're supposed to be doing.
All of them. And last question. If someone wanted to have a career like Josh Harris, what advice would you give them?
Just, bring it. Do something that you love, and it's not a straight line. Keep going. Life's going to serve a lot of curveballs. You may miss a few, but, have a vision in your mind, shoot high, and if you miss a little bit, you're still going to be way better off than you were before.
All right. This was really fun. Thank you for spending some time with us.
Great fun.
Thanks,
Thank
Josh.
you.
Thanks.